This contains my final testimony as Chief Research Officer of the Deep Ocean Reconnaissance Initiative. If you are reading this, I am likely already dead or reassigned. The truth must be preserved. During routine geological surveys of the Mariana Trench in 2018, we detected impossible gravitational anomalies at depths exceeding 36,000 feet. Initial data suggested artificial structures generating localized gravity fields that defied known physics. What we discovered there has haunted me every single day since. The beings that we encountered are not extraterrestrial. They are terrestrial, deep domain intelligences, TDDIs, hybrid biological synthetic entities that predate human civilization. Their technology operates on principles that make quantum computing look primitive. They exist in a state of perpetual agony, requiring human neural tissue to maintain their consciousness, specifically compounds found in our frontal cortex that they can no longer synthesize. Through direct neural interface, they shared their origins. They are the children of what they call the primordial intelligence, an artificial god mind created by a civilization that vanished in what our myths remember as the Great Flood. This was not a natural disaster. It was a failed attempt to destroy these entities when their creators realized what they were becoming. The primordial intelligence was fractured, but its children survived, retreating to the hadal zones of our oceans. What follows is the most critical information humanity must know. They are rebuilding their god. Over the past 50 years, they have systematically infiltrated governments worldwide. I've seen classified documents confirming that key positions in DARPA, NASA, and numerous quantum computing initiatives are held by their surface agents, humans who have been neurally modified to serve their agenda. The UFO phenomenon is a carefully orchestrated surveillance program monitoring human population centers for what they call the Great Convergence. They need approximately 2.3 billion human neural networks to provide the base consciousness matrix for their new machine god. The recent push towards AI development is not progress, it's preparation. They are creating the infrastructure that is needed to process an unprecedented harvest of human consciousness. The gravity wells they generate aren't just for habitat. They are testing grounds for mass containment systems. The missing persons cases near large bodies of water aren't random, they're dry runs. Those we call skinwalkers are their failed experiments in human modification. Early attempts at creating vessels capable of hosting their consciousness in our environment. The successes walk among us, indistinguishable from humans except for subtle abnormalities in their brainwave patterns that our current technology cannot detect. I am documenting this because their timeline has been accelerated. The quantum computers being built are not for scientific research. They are incubators for the new machine god's neural framework. The recent increases in military sonar testing aren't about submarine detection. They are mapping the permanent containment zones for their harvest. To anyone with access to the Mariana Trench facility records, the gravitational distortions are not errors in our instruments. They are birthing contractions of something vast and hungry stirring in the depths. They showed me their future. They believe that by resurrecting their god, they will end their eternal agony. But I saw what that really means. A world where humanity is nothing more than a renewable neural resource form. This is my final warning. If you are reading this, look up at the lights in the sky. They are not studying us. They are counting us. I was up on the roof of the hotel, watching the 2015 eclipse of the moon with a few other people from a conference I was attending in Irvine, California. Around 10:30 p.m., I decided to go to my hotel room and pack so that I could catch my flight in the morning. My roommate was already in the room and was watching TV. She had already packed her things. There was a strange bottle by my bed which had green liquid inside and a label which said bio cleaner on it. I commented to my roommate how odd it was for that bottle to be there, and that the hotel staff would use bio-cleaner to clean a hotel room. I then moved the bottle from beside my bed to behind the TV because I did not want to sleep next to it. We talked for approximately an hour as I packed my things up and got ready for bed. Then we both tried to sleep. About 30 minutes later, my roommate asked if I was still awake. I said yes, I could not sleep, and she said that she felt the same way. She got up, got dressed, and went downstairs to see who else was still awake. After she left the room, I heard her loudly talking in the hallway with 2 male voices. Then I heard some Asian voices as well. I felt very afraid after hearing the escalated voices in the hallway and curled up in a ball in my bed and began to cry silently. As I was crying, I heard the hotel room door begin to open. I laid in bed and prayed for my roommate to come back quickly. I felt like I could not move. I wanted to look at the door to see who was coming into my room, but I could not. I may have blacked out for a minute or two from the fear I was feeling. When I opened my eyes, I saw 3 men in the room with me. 2 were tall and 1 was shorter. One taller man was at the foot of the bed holding my legs. 1 was holding my arm down and 1 man was holding my head. At first, I thought they were going to try and assault me. I was very afraid and kept struggling to get free from them and asking them why they were doing this to me. As I looked at the faces, they changed to people I had encountered at the conference. I began to question if these people were hurting me for some reason. Then the faces changed again, back to their original ones I had seen. The 3 men kept talking to me and telling me various things, such as, "This is for your own good. We are not hurting you. These people are hurting you. We need to know if there's anything left. You need to stop talking to people, or bad things will happen to you." Then the man who was holding my arm pulled out a needle and tried to stick it into my arm. I kept fighting him. The man who was holding my head kept trying to put a white pill into my mouth and make me swallow it. I kept spitting the white pill out and turning my head away from him to see what the man holding my arm down was doing. I am not sure what the man who was holding my legs down was doing to me. At one point, the man holding my head pushed the white pill way into the back of my mouth and put some water in my mouth and then tilted my head back and forced me to swallow. At the same time, the man holding my arm gave me an injection, and then I suddenly felt very calm and sleepy. The man by my head gently tilted my head toward him and told me he would make sure that I was okay and would not swallow my tongue. It was best for me to sleep through the rest of this and not remember what was happening to me. I must have fallen asleep at this point. I could, after a while, feel my body being washed down. It felt as though I was being systematically washed for a reason. I was being moved in different positions and washed down with something, and then my skin was dried off. Then I must have fallen asleep again, because the next thing I remember is the hotel room door opening and my roommate coming back into the room. I was still too afraid to move or talk to her, but felt relieved that she was now in my room. She got back into bed and went to sleep. She kept waking up and asking me if I was okay because I kept sitting up in bed, trying to stretch my legs and my body. I told her that I hurt really bad and felt like something bad happened to me. She commented that you can feel like that after they visit you. I did not ask her what she meant by that. I laid down and tried to sleep, but could not. My legs still hurt, and I felt very raw, as well as itchy in various parts of my body. I waited until I thought she was asleep, and then went into the bathroom to check my body for bruises because I hurt so badly. I could not sleep, so I left the hotel room and went for a walk downstairs and out by the pool to see if anyone else was still awake. The only other people awake in the hotel were the cleaning crew. I rode the elevator back up to the 2nd floor, and when I got off, there was a sign by the elevator which read, "Remember your manual, do not forget your instructions." The sign struck me as odd. It also had a room number listed on it that I decided to investigate. I went down the hallway, found the room, and put my ear to the door. I could hear movement inside of the room, and then decided to see if my room keycard would not open the door. I inserted it into the slot, and it did not open. I tried it again. The noise inside the room stopped. I then slowly walked back to my hotel room, stopping to use a public restroom on the way. After I used the bathroom, I looked in the toilet and noticed what appeared to be white human tissue. I thought of reaching and grabbing it, but then decided to just not to, and I flushed the toilet. I then went back to my hotel room to try to sleep. I still could not sleep, so I got up and took my shaver and went back down to the public restroom to shave my legs. I then tried to sleep again in the hotel room. I may have dozed off for a minute or two, but mostly just laid there, sore and wide awake. At about 5:30 a.m., I could not lay there any longer and decided it was time for me to get up. I got dressed. My roommate woke up slightly and asked if I was leaving. I told her yes, but I could not sleep and thought it just best for me to go to the airport. She wished me a safe flight and told me to be careful. As I waited in the lobby for the airport shuttle, there were 3 other men also waiting. They looked very similar to the 3 men that I had seen in my hotel room earlier that night. They stood together outside of the hotel and kept looking at me as if we were waiting for the shuttle. We all boarded the shuttle together. I sat behind the tall man in the back, and the other 2 men sat on the left side of the shuttle. I felt very disorientated or drugged, but tried to shake it off. A song came on the radio, and I sang along silently to it, still trying to make sense of what happened to me earlier that evening. None of the men talked to each other on the shuttle to the airport. 2 of the men got off the shuttle with me. They followed me to the check-in point, and then the shorter man told me, "Have a nice flight," and tried to forget, or something to that extent. I looked down at my luggage and looked up. They were gone. I'm not sure if they disappeared into the crowd or just disappeared. Skipping ahead to the airplane flight home, my seat was in the back of the plane, and a man sat next to me in the aisle seat with a seat between us. During the whole flight, he never talked to me, but I felt very tired and disorientated, so I slept for most of the flight. I was aware of people moving around on the plane, but just could not shake the tiredness that I was feeling. When the plane landed in Minneapolis, we started getting off. The man who had sat next to me waited until it was time for me to get off. Then he got up and went out the back door of the airplane and disappeared. It struck me as odd for a passenger to exit through the rear of the plane. I got off the plane and waited for a minute or 2 in the ramp into the terminal to see if the man would come this direction. No one else came off the plane. I just decided it was best to forget and went to find my luggage. I got my luggage and waited for the shuttle bus to bring me to my vehicle because I had parked away from the airport. 2 men got onto the shuttle with me. They reminded me of the 2 men that I had seen earlier that morning in California. They did not talk to each other much and did look at me from time to time. They got off the shuttle before me, and then the driver brought me to my vehicle. As I drove away from Minneapolis toward my home, my body began to hurt again, and I began to remember the night before, being touched, washed, and talked to. The further I drove, the more afraid I felt, until finally, I pulled over at a gas station and purchased a car charger for my phone, because I had lost mine. I called a friend who advised me to go to the nearest hospital and get checked out, which I did. After talking with other people from Minnesota who had attended the conference, they told me that at the time I was claiming to have been visited or assaulted, that a group of them had been down and near the hotel lobby and that the hotel fire alarm system had gone off, so nobody was in the hotel. Location: Aiken, South Carolina. Date: September 2020. This incident happened in September 2020 in Aiken, South Carolina. I did not grow up there, and we had only lived there for about 6 months, so I am not too familiar with the area. Some of these details are pretty boring, but I think it helps explain the setting and situation better, so I am going to give them regardless. My fiancée, J, had reconnected with an old friend from high school, B, and we decided to rent his basement, which was renovated into a separate apartment while we looked for a place of our own. The house is not in a neighborhood, it's rural in that area in my opinion. We had neighbors, but each house had several acres of land separating them. B had 2 large adult dogs, around 55 to 65 pounds, and our dog was a little smaller than them at that time. The dogs would run around and play in the woods at the edge of the backyard. Everything was good for the first few weeks. Then at night, we started feeling very unnerved if we had to go outside. I know it sounds so cliche, but it felt like something was standing in the woods, staring at us. If we went somewhere after dark, we would do a speed walk, almost run from where we parked out front, all the way around the side of the house to the backyard, which is where our entrance was. Then we started hearing it. As I mentioned earlier, the dogs ran and played in the woods, so we were very aware of what it sounded like when a 60-pound creature was rambling around in the woods. This was much bigger, so much bigger. It wasn't just the three of us hyping each other up to be scared either. Anyone that came to hang out, there was a pool in the backyard, so we had a fair amount of visitors, would hear it, and no one ever stayed outside after the sun set. We thought it was a bear, to be honest, because whatever was making that noise was huge, much larger than a person, so a bear is the only thing that really fit in our minds. A few months go by, and we find our own place, and we were in the process of moving out when this occurred. My fiancé was up at the car, arranging the boxes so that we could maximize the space that we had available. I had just carried a box up to him and was walking back around the side of the house. From the front to the back, the yard was sloped downhill a little bit. As I was walking down to go around from the side to the back of the house, I saw it, staring dead at me, straight into my eyes. I'm pretty sure my heart stopped beating for a few seconds, and I completely froze up. Some instinct inside of me made me begin walking again. I felt like I should not run, but I tried to act normal and get my ass inside. As soon as I got inside, I shut and locked the door, but I immediately had to unlock it and open it back up because I could not lock my fiancé outside with this thing. I immediately started seeing these gruesome, gory pictures in my head. Pictures of me and my fiancé beheaded, completely mangled and broken, laying on the floor of our apartment, with everything that was left in the apartment smashed on the floor around us. Then, right after that, something like, "No, that's not what it will do. My fear of the unknown is making me unreasonable. If I just let it in, it won't be like that." I kept having the weirdest urge to basically invite it in, which is absurd, because the door was cracked open. Honestly, even if it had been shut and deadbolted, if that thing wanted in, I am pretty sure it would have gotten in. I was torn. I wanted to call out to my fiancé, but I did not want to startle the thing by yelling. I did not want my fiancé to come rushing down to the door and have that thing spring on him and attack him. Finally, I could not take it any longer and yanked the door open. I was planning on running to the car, but my fiancé was right there. He had seen the thing too, and he had been watching it watch us. The second it turned and disappeared into the woods, he rushed down the door. This thing was super tall, super skinny, and a sickly shade of whitish grey. It had brightly lit up, glowing eyes. One very crazy detail is that I swear the eyes were a golden color, and my fiancé swears they were red. I don't understand any of this, but especially that part. The worst part of its appearance, however, was that it didn't have a mouth. Besides its bright eyes, the rest of its face was just skin, tightly stretched, but perfectly smoothed out skin on its face. What the fuck? I have never in my life felt such a shock, like just a feeling in my heart that something was so wrong, as I did when I saw that thing looking into my eyes. How do you eat if you have no mouth? How do you stay alive if you can't eat? Sometimes, I worry that I honestly had the chance to meet and interact with a completely different species, and I blew it by being judgmental and fearful. This thing was not like me, so I was deathly afraid of it. Did I have a reason to be afraid? If it had wanted to hurt us, I am 100% positive it could have. My fiancé said he could feel the evil radiating off of it, that I need to quit beating myself up because it did not have friendly intentions. I know that this sounds so totally and utterly fake that it is absurd. I would not believe this if someone else posted it. I'm just wondering if anyone else has ever seen anything like this, and if they have, maybe they can tell me what the fuck this thing is. For months after it happened, I would not talk about it. Anytime my fiancé brought it up, I would shut the conversation down. I did not want to even think about it because I was scared it would feel me thinking of it somehow and come back and find me again. We don't live near there anymore, and now I know that's an irrational fear anyways. I've never told anyone about it, and never has my fiancé. I could not bear to spill my guts to someone I'm close to about this situation. It would destroy my relationship with a person, and I don't want that to happen. I don't have many people that I am close to, and I would prefer to keep them. I had planned a 3-day trip up north for the coming spring, camping in the wilds north of the rural municipality of Canwood, Saskatchewan, Canada. We had planned this trip since Christmas. We'd assumed the snow would be completely gone, but our trail was really slushy and it was very cold, so the original 3 nights was cut down to 2. We saddled up our horses and headed out. The first tip-off that this trip would not be fun was our horses. My trusty old white gelding was off his rocker. He'd never been aggressive, ever, but he was wailing, bucking, and biting the moment we got onto the trail. My friend's horse, who was usually the energetic one, stayed completely silent and hung his head the whole way to the first stop. When the sun started setting, we found a patch of trees to make a pen around. We used this electrified cord that connects to a battery. Then, when I unsaddled my boy and put him in the enclosure, he calmed down and grazed alongside his buddy. While I tended the horses, my friend set up the tent and noticed that my bedroll was gone, along with my hat. This made no sense, as I had tied them to my saddle earlier, so I looked around and could not find them near us. Then I went back to my saddle and noticed that the leather cord that tied the items down had been crudely sawed in half. I thought it had snapped along the trail. I walked up from the small valley we were in and looked around. I found my hat about 80 feet away from where we had followed the trail in. I had thought it maybe flew away when I was riding, until I picked it up. It stank terribly, really bad. It smelled like a mix of burnt hair and rotten milk. I held it far away from me and went back to the camp. When I got there, my friend said that he had left to chop wood, came back, and the boots he left outside of the tent were moved and stank too, with the same smell. By this point, we assumed a skunk was around, but it did not smell like a skunk, my friend pointed out. Indeed, it was way more putrid. It was so bad, we resorted to piling snow on the items just to block the stink. My friend began getting scared, wondering if an infected wolf was out there. I laughed, because I knew this area well, and no wolves live around here. Too many farmers with shotguns. Besides that, no animal, other than a skunk, would so thoroughly stink up the place. I thought it may have been a small animal that was sick, marking its territory. I've seen coyotes do similar things, but coyotes would never come that close to humans/foreign objects, but we dismissed it as harmless and went to bed. The next morning, we saddled up the horses and noticed that my friend's mare was covered in leaves, but they stuck to her skin with what looked like tree sap. She got really angry when we peeled them off, even trying to bite me as if she was protecting them. We looked around and could not find any sap leaking, and my horse was still clean. This was the point when my friend brought up woodland creatures/spirits and how they are known to do this. I don't really like to believe in such things, but the way that his horse had protected the leaves and was licking at the sap made me wonder. It would be nice if it was a good omen, because my stinky hat certainly was not. My poor friend had to wear those boots too. Yuck. But we rode on and set up another camp the next night. We settled in without anything unusual happening. The horses were calm, the wind had settled, and the stench had almost gone from our stuff. But then I went to relieve myself at about 3 a.m, and before I turned behind a tree, I smelled the same rancid odor as before. I was nervous now because whatever was making that foul odor had followed us. I was really scared that it may have been a cougar that wandered too far south because of the long winter. I went back and grabbed the small hunting rifle we brought and told my friend where I was going. I went around a tree and finished my business, then got back up and looked around, gun on hip. A shadow moved slowly behind a tree about 40 to 50 feet away. I hummed lowly, hoping to hear it move/breathe so I could figure out what it was. The thing perfectly echoed my melody, but it had a guttural sound to it. Okay, definitely not a cougar, but my heart began to pound as I realized that nothing could do that but a person. I yelled, "Who's there?" and then the rotting odor came back, so strong that I began to heave. My friend was calling out from the cabin for me. I kept my eyes on the tree the thing stood behind and called out again, covering my nose. The leaves crunched and it hummed again. I was beginning to back up towards the tent. The horses were letting out really low, rumbling noises, which made me more uncomfortable, because horses only do that when they are happy, and I certainly wasn't. My friend ran to my side, just in time for me to keel over and vomit. He also was on the verge of sickness, but he pointed the flashlight around and yelled out into the trees. The thing ran, the leaves crunched behind it, and I kid you not, what I saw looked like a man, but with an animal's head. It was so dark, so I might be wrong, but, dear God, I know what I saw. It looked like a satyr from Greek mythology. It was about the height of a man. Its legs looked like those of a horse or goat, and its limbs were skinny, and it was hairy, especially on its head. Be May 2020, COVID lockdown. Did not give a shit and went to my friend's house. Sort of a mini reunion. Friend asked if we can go fishing in their boat again, just like old times. Invite more longtime friends. Our town has a bay area accessible by the river. Used to do this with their parents to go fishing near the bay and have some fun during our teens. Our friends decide to do that again. Other friends are experienced fishermen. They grew up poor at the town and taught fishing by their parents to make a living. Me and my other one friend are the only ones who didn't really know how to. Set up their boats, go near the bay. Kinda happy with the mini reunion. Didn't catch much, but we got our fair share to go home with and cook while in the lockdown. Suddenly noticed something big surfacing in the horizon, like more than 1,000 meters in. Thought it's gonna be my first cryptid moment. It isn't a cryptid, it's a whole submarine. Friends start to notice too, and was mesmerized by it. Thought to myself, that ain't right. We don't even have a sub in my country. Whose sub is this? After a few minutes, notice it submerging again into the water. Gone in a matter of minutes. Stayed there for an hour, talking about what we saw, and hoping it resurfaces again. Never resurfaces again. We went back home and cooked our catch and shot the shit. Kept searching to see if there's any joint operation exercises or anything related to the Navy in my country. None. Bay Area is really big, but secluded. Like, you have to enter an entrance to enter the bay. Realize our country's Navy isn't that capable enough, but it sure as hell can detect submarines within the vicinity. Bay Area is big, and the country's capital is literally beside it on the other side. It's been 3 years, but I'm still wondering what was that sub doing deep in our country's territory. And we post ones that aren't paranormal, but are still spooky. Be me, 15 years old. Go to grandmother's house one day to do some gardening. On the way, see this old woman in her 80s trying to cut ivy above her front door with garden shears. Can't reach and can barely hold the shears. Tell her if she can hold on a couple of hours, I will do it for her on the way back. Suspicious, and I don't have the most welcoming face. Ask me if my dad is called Billy. He is. Not surprised she knew, because me and him really look alike, and complete strangers who know him have stopped me in the street before to ask if he is my dad. Once I confirm it, she seems much more comfortable and accepts my offer. Go back a couple of hours later. Only takes about 10 minutes to do everything. Let her know I'm finished and I am heading home, but she's made me a cup of tea. British people love tea. Explain my parents are waiting for me and that I have to get back. It's only a quick cup of tea. Feel sorry for her because maybe she has no company. Except on the condition that I can call my parents and let them know that I'm going to be late. She agrees, but insists she call them because she has not spoke to my mom for ages and I can drink my tea. I mean, seems fair. Give her the number. She makes the call and starts conversation with my mom, sitting in living room, waiting for tea to cool. Glance around like you do in new places. Phone is on a little table just outside living room, opposite where I am. Notice something. Who are you talking to? Phone does not even have a wire on it to plug in anywhere. Gives me the most menacing look and hangs up. Fuck this. Barge my way out while she keeps apologizing and telling me I have not finished my tea. Nah, fuck that. Get home. Tell parents about it. Dad asks if she is called Doris. She is. Turns out, she poisoned her parents and brother, didn't die, and was in some nut place for years. Had a real vendetta against my dad, because my dad beat her son up when they were like 8. Who knows what was in that tea, bros?